From the studios of KENW on the campus of Eastern New Mexico University, it's You Should Know, featuring the people and events of Eastern New Mexico and West Texas.
Welcome. I'm your host, Evelyn Ledbetter for You Should Know. Thank you for joining us. My guest today is Dr. Don Elder. Doc.
Evelyn, pleasure to be back.
Well, it's great to have you. We just had such a good time last time, and there was so much of your life to tell. It was too quick to wind down. So, the man behind the mic, this is a treat.
So, I've got a lot of stories.
You do. So, we kind of, in one of our past interviews, you talked a lot about your early years and growing up in the Midwest, and your dad being a broadcaster, and kind of getting your stripes, watching him along the way. So I thought we'd move into when you got out of high school, you'd played ball. Did you continue playing baseball into college?
Actually, interestingly enough, when I graduated from high school, I had put all of my eggs into a very small basket. I had only applied to 5 schools. I had applied to Harvard, I'd applied to Yale, I had applied to Stanford, I had applied to Rice, and I had applied to Northwestern. I got outright rejected by 2 of those schools. I actually made the short list for Harvard, but the thing that hurt me was the fact that those schools required you to have trigonometry and calculus, and I hated math, and so I had basically just taken the minimum to get out. But fortunately, I had good enough test scores and good enough overall resume that I got into Northwestern. And when I went to Northwestern, I thought, well, they're a Big Ten school. There's no way I'm going to be able to be good enough to be on any team. And they put an advertisement in the student newspaper for tryouts for the freshman basketball team, because back in those days, freshmen weren't eligible for varsity competition.
Very interesting.
And so I had a friend who was fraternity brother, and he said, let's go try out for the team, and maybe at the very least we could like steal a T-shirt or something that says Northwestern basketball.
We can say we were there.
We were there, exactly.
And got the T-shirt.
So I showed up, and I recognized pretty early on that this was going to be just a really, really quick tryout. And so I figured if I shoot the ball every time I get my hands on it and I make up the shots, at least maybe they're going to remember my name. And sure enough, I was like the last guy that they took on the team. So I was just good enough to be on the freshman team at Northwestern basketball. And I did get a really cool pair of basketball shorts that I still have to this day. And from time to time, just to embarrass my kids, I put them on and show them my really short shorts that say Northwestern basketball.
And the Chuck Taylor, I'm going to guess they were Converse Chuck Taylor shoes as well.
We had actually just made the transition to Adidas basketball shoes. And those are clunk. I don't know if you've ever tried a pair of like Superstar Adidas on. They're absolutely the most user-unfriendly shoes.
I think I maybe wore a pair.
But they looked cool, and so it was like way better than wearing the Chuck Taylors. But yeah, Chuck Taylors were what I had worn in high school.
Funny.
But college, got the Adidas on.
So you knew basketball. Did you get any court time?
17 seconds. But I got to see, back in those days, the Big Ten had some really good basketball players. University of Iowa had downtown Freddie Brown, and George McGinnis played for Indiana, Ron Behagen, and a bunch of guys. Dave Winfield, a lot of guys know Dave Winfield is a great Major League Baseball player. He was an exceptionally good basketball player at the University of Minnesota. So like every team, we'd play the freshman game, and then there'd be the varsity game. And so I'd be sitting there and I'd see all of these guys.
The stellar people. Look at who you met.
Yep. Exactly.
That 17 seconds was worth.
It was totally worth it.
Or so much more. So you were on the court.
I was on the court.
You were on the court. So when you decided you weren't going to be going to the NBA, your next thought was, what did you decide to do in college?
Well, I went to college with a couple of possibilities. I still held out the idea that I might become a doctor. a useful kind of doctor. Right? People now, I'm a doctor, but I'm not the
You're a
useful
very
kind.
useful
I can't
doctor.
take out your appendix or
You're
suture you up if you got a cut. But um, so I took biology, and I'll never forget it. I took the midterm, and back in those days, a lot of courses were just a midterm and a final, and
Mhm.
that was the
Oh,
entire basis of the grade. And
wow.
so I took the midterm, and it was just like, I don't remember studying any of this. And I was just like going through it. And back in those days, before they changed the federal laws about reporting grades with FERPA, they used to just take a piece of paper and they'd put the student ID number and then they'd put the score next to it so you could show up and you could see the score that you got. And so I showed up at my professors. There are like 200 names because it's a big class. And I got a 66 out of 100. And so I called up my parents and I said, I'm going to flunk out of school. I hope you didn't rent my room or anything
I'll
like
be
that.
back.
And then the next class, the professor said, well, I was really disappointed in the scores. We did have two people in the class that got scores in the 90s, but the next best score was at 66.
Oh my.
And I thought, wait a second, I got 66. And
You were the third
I
highest
was
in
the
the
third
class?
highest out of 200 people. And so, because back in those days, they did the bell-shaped
You're right.
curve and they had
Right.
to give a certain
Right.
number of people an A. The
It
A's
was
went
it
from
was the same for
99
my
down to
world too.
But I thought to myself, I wouldn't want a doctorate that only got a 66 out of 100 on a basic biology test. So it's like, okay, not going to be that kind of doctor.
This might not be my
Might not
forte.
be the best. So then that limited me to, okay, I could either go into education or I could become a lawyer because I knew I wanted history if I
Mhm.
wasn't going to be a real doctor. And after 2 years, I decided I wanted to be an educator. But Northwestern, it's a great school, but not really known for producing
Okay.
teachers. And back in my home state of Iowa, the University of Northern Iowa was the state teachers college. And so I decided I could save my parents some money, get a better
Right.
education for education by going to UNI. And so I
Okay.
transferred there for my junior and senior years.
Okay. And you met someone pretty significant along the way.
So the very
Let's
first day I was at University of Northern Iowa, I ran into one of my friends from my hometown of Marshalltown, and I said, "Well, hey, let's have lunch together." So we went to the big cafeteria, and UNI was about three times the size of Eastern,
Okay.
so bigger school, bigger cafeteria, and we were sitting there talking. And all of a sudden, a girl came in and got in line, and my heart just skipped a beat. It's like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. And I
Aw.
was telling my friend, hey, check out that girl, man. She's a babe. And I'd really like to get to know her, but big school, so what are the chances? And my friend just kind of leaned back in his chair and said, "No, I think I could arrange an introduction." And it was like, yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
This guy was not
Uh-huh.
exactly Casanova or anything. But it turned out that she was the roommate of my friend's girlfriend who had also gone to high school with the two
Oh,
of us. And I
very
said,
nice.
well, hey, could we go over and see my good buddy, your girlfriend, Sue, who just like barely knew me when we were in high school and we'd never been friends. But sure enough, we went over and so, well, hi, Sue. And then, well, hi, how are you? And I met Janine Snyder, and
Aw.
that was my last first date for over 50 years.
Oh
So
my.
that's how we met.
So where was the first date?
So the first date, it turned out that even though the school year had just started, she already had dates for Friday and Saturday already because she was a babe, really good looking girl. And so I said, well, Sunday, could I take you out to eat? And in Cedar Falls, Iowa, back in 1972, there weren't many places that were open. So we found a Howard Johnson's. I don't know if you remember that
Yeah,
chain,
I do.
but Howard Johnson's was open. So I took her for a burger and fries. And so that was a romantic first date
The
at Hojo's.
well,
So,
that's probably the way a lot of us started out so in some sort of manner like that. So
exactly.
started dating and got married before you got out of school.
I so I graduated in May of 1974. We got married on August 10th, 1974. Did a honeymoon, came back, and on August 19th, I started my career as a high school teacher.
Well, that was my birthday. So I'll always remember the day you started teaching.
What an amazing
It
coincidence.
is. It is. So how fun. So you were flush with money.
Uh,
Just had it rolling out of your pockets, I'm sure, right out of school.
I I signed my first contract. So I was a high school social studies teacher. I was signed up originally to coach basketball and track, and I made $7,900. And I thought I was like J. Paul Getty. I thought I was the richest guy on the face of the planet.
After you've been a starting college student, a steady paycheck is any amount of money is pretty
Yep.
sweet. And Janine, what did she go into?
And she was a year behind me in
Okay.
college. And so when we were getting married, she said, "Oh, I just want to be a housewife. I want to be there every day when you come home." And after about 2 months, she met me at the door. I said, "Honey, would it be okay if I went back and
Good
got
for
my
her.
degree?" And it's like being a
Good for her.
housewife is nice, but I
Not
really
enough.
feel unfulfilled. And so she was an education major, and so she went back to school, and we scrimped and saved, and she took out a loan, and we were able to finance it. And so she went back to school and
Good.
got her elementary ed degree. And it was really good that she didn't look for a job right when we got married, because back in those days, Evelyn, to show you how far, and to show our viewing audience how far things have
Right.
changed, school districts in Iowa would not hire a husband and wife as
Okay.
teachers, because the theory was that a female teacher was taking a job away from a guy who could support a family.
Ooh,
And so that wasn't just
wow.
the school that I was at, that was like all across the state of Iowa. But fortunately, by the mid 70s,
Mhm.
a more progressive atmosphere dawned in the state of Iowa. And it's like, no, I guess it's okay for a wife to be a teacher. And so Janine got a job
Okay.
teaching elementary in Vinton, Iowa. And so for a number of years, we were both teachers in the Vinton school system.
I think that's a great point I'm glad you brought that out. I mean, to you and I, that doesn't seem that long ago, but for people that are younger, the thought that just a crazy thought process.
Yep.
So you taught high school level for a little while, and then tell me the progression of your education after that.
So during my years in Vinton, I was there 9 years as a teacher and a coach. I taught at various times U.S. history, world history, taught government, taught one section of sociology as an elective. I became, and this is going to sound insane, but my last 2 years in the fall, I would get up in the morning and I was the girls' swim coach at Vinton
Okay.
High School. Vinton High School didn't have a swimming pool, but the Braille School was located in Vinton. And as a matter of fact, if anybody has ever read the Little House on the Prairie
Uh-huh.
series,
Sure.
that one of Laura Ingalls Wilder's
I
sister
remember that.
goes to a Braille school. The Braille school she went
Right.
to was in Vinton, Iowa. So that's
How
actual and factual, and that's where she went. They had a pool, and they said, "Well, yeah, you can use the pool when we don't have
okay.
kids that are swimming there." Well, what time don't you have kids swimming there? 6 o'clock in the morning. So
Outside or inside pool?
it was an inside pool.
Okay.
I mean, Vinton had an
I
outside pool, but
it's frozen. It's an
it
ice
was frozen over.
It's a skating rink. They keep it open.
So the only way our kids can compete
Okay.
was by using the Braille School pool to practice. And so then I went and taught, and then in the afternoon in the fall I was the assistant varsity football coach. And then in the winter, I'd get up in the morning and I would do the boys swim team. And then in the afternoon, I was the assistant varsity basketball
Oh,
coach for boys. In the spring, I was the assistant coach for track. I did distance runners because you and I were both distance runners.
right.
You were much more successful in your
Well,
career.
I went to a very small school, so the pond was quite limited.
You're selling yourself short, Ellen. I know how good you were back in the day.
Uh,
But I was also the head sponsor of the junior class, which is
okay.
responsible for putting on the
Yep.
prom. So
Yeah,
that's
you're talking my language here.
yep. And then baseball is a summer sport in Iowa. And so in the summertime, I was the assistant varsity baseball coach.
Okay.
And so I was coaching 6 sports in addition to being a full-time teacher. In
That's
addition to the
insane.
fact that for some strange reason, my colleagues twice selected me to be the president of the local NEA, National Education Association chapter. And they're the collective bargaining agent in the state of Iowa for all the school employees. So I had to collectively bargain with the school board for salaries, for everybody's salaries, bus
Oh,
drivers, cooks, janitors, teachers,
no
coaches.
pressure there. Everybody's livelihood is on your shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like if I could get them $50 extra,
That's
that,
huge.
that was a big
That's
deal.
huge. That's a car payment.
Yeah. So
So,
I mean, I loved being a high school teacher. I was quite honored that twice I was selected the teacher of the year. But we had started a family. My older son was born in 1980, and
okay.
I just wasn't there. I
You were
He
missing.
was walking for a week
Oh,
before I actually
oh,
saw him walk because
oh,
I was getting up in the morning to go coach swimming, and I was getting
oh,
back at like 8 or 9
right.
when Cam was already in bed. And so it's like, all right, I love education.
But,
High school teaching and coaching is a little bit time consuming.
right.
So it's like, if I got a PhD and I was able to then become a college professor, then I could set my schedule
Sure,
so that I could be home
sure.
more. And I could be the cool parent that does the school field
Yeah,
trips and
right.
go read to the kids and
You don't
everything
get
like
that
that.
time back.
No,
You
you
don't get a
don't.
second chance at that.
No.
So if you miss those years, they're gone.
But I had to ask Janine, it's like, okay, honey, I'm thinking about quitting my job and going to graduate school, and this is why I want to do that. What do you think? And bless her heart, she was just totally supportive
How nice.
of everything that I did in my career. And so she's like, yeah, that's definitely something.
Okay.
And she had confidence that I'd be able to pursue a PhD program and get my doctorate. And so 1983, we got a moving van and moved to La Jolla, California, which is where the University of California,
Okay.
San Diego is located. And there again, I put all my eggs into an even smaller
Oh,
basket
no.
because I only applied to 2 grad schools. I applied to the University of Arizona, which at the time had a fabulous PhD program in
Mhm.
diplomatic history, and University of California, San Diego. And I was fortunate to get into both. And we thought, well, Tucson's nice. La Jolla, California is even
This
better.
is a pretty hands down easy choice on
It
this.
was, yeah, exactly. And so, in the fall of 1983, I started a graduate program at University of California, San Diego.
That teaching degree that Janine had probably came in quite useful during those lean years.
What she did was she actually applied for a job on campus because she figured then we could save money and we could commute together.
Very nice.
And she got hired by the Science and Engineering Library because during the summertime, she had actually worked at the Vinton Public Library. So she had library experience. And then for 6 years, she was reference librarian at the University of California, San Diego, and Science and Engineering Library. And so she helped put me through
Through school.
grad school. I was lucky that I was able to get fellowships, which helped out. I also, interestingly enough, got a job as the assistant women's basketball coach at the University of California,
Okay.
San Diego, because the
Wow.
first year I was there, I played basketball and the gym. They only had one gym back in those days. They got
Hmm.
a beautiful facility now. And after the end of the college basketball season, the head basketball coach, women's basketball coach, who was amazingly enough a native of New Mexico. She had graduated, I think it was from like Siebel. Um, she would play noontime basketball with us, and we got to be friends. And then a week before the start of the second year of my grad program, she came to me and said, "My top assistant just got hired as a head coach at another school. I don't really have time to go out and beat the bushes to
Right.
find an assistant. I've played basketball with you enough to know that you've
And
got,
you're here.
and you're
You're
here.
here.
Would you like to be my assistant?" And so I went to Janine and said, "Honey, would it be," because I'd never coached girls except for the girls swimming. That was the
Sure.
only,
Sure.
so I said, "Honey, would it be okay if I became the assistant coach for 18 to 22-year-old
Are you okay? Are
California
you okay?
girls?"
Are you okay with me hanging out with really pretty California girls a
Yeah,
lot of the time?
yeah. So try and imagine, you were in that. But she said, "Yeah, you love coaching, and I trust you." And so
Hmm.
I got to be a an assistant basketball coach on the college level, and I wish I'd coached girls earlier
Really?
because with guys, you tell them to do something and they think they know better than you do. And it's really a tough sell. But boy, those girls, I mean, you tell them, okay, do this, jump stop, pivot, and they just, man, they do it. They just totally bought in. They were just tremendously coachable. And it, it was a great experience.
That's really nice. And you added this the second son somewhere along the way
We
when
decided that we wanted to have a second child. And so in 1987, my son Brian was born. So he's my California kid. And it's really funny. My two sons have really different personalities. And Cam's a lot more the Midwesterner that Janine and I were. Like
okay.
Brian's the laid back Cali kid.
Okay. And I've never met Brian. I remember your son Cam when he did some radio announcing when he was in maybe high school or early college years. So
He was a product of this beautiful facility we have here. He was a broadcast
very
journalism
nice.
major at Eastern and was the back, now we call it News 3 New Mexico,
Hmm.
and it used to be Scene 3.
Okay.
And so Cam was the sports guy, the sports anchor for a number of semesters.
This is definitely genetic. The voice just kept and the name also Donald Cameron Elder. So you're the second and your son Cam is the third.
Actually, I'm the third.
You are the third. So this is a
Yes,
very long-standing
it's
name.
but Don Cameron II was my dad, who was, as we found out in a previous episode, was a
Right.
broadcaster. I was a
Okay.
broadcaster, Cam's broadcaster. So that's really putting a lot of
Okay.
pressure on my son Cam's son because he's Donald Cameron V.
Oh, Cinco.
Yep. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, the nickname given to him is Quinn,
Okay.
which is
Quinto.
Latin, yes,
Okay.
for five.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like, yeah, kid,
That's pretty
we're
cool.
going to get you the little, fake karaoke machine
Oh, how
like we
fun
had
is
back
how
when we
fun
were
is
younger.
that? Well, the students here, they bring in their little machine and have strobe lights, so it helps set the mood and lighten it up. So thanks to Hunter that does that for me every week and makes it fun. And so,
Exactly.
we still haven't gotten very far, and there's a ton of your life, so you haven't even made it to Eastern yet at this point.
No, as a matter of fact, I did 6 years at University of California, San Diego, got my PhD, was hired on a one-year basis at a liberal arts college, the University of Redlands, which is in Redlands, Southern California. It's about 30 miles due east of downtown LA. And then they asked me to come back for a second year, and then they made it a tenure track position. And
Oh,
for me, Evelyn, it was a great school. I absolutely loved it, but Southern California wasn't a great place to raise kids.
Well,
And
let's stop there. We're almost out of time,
oh my
and this
goodness.
is a good segue into we'll do another part of your life at Eastern. So,
I'd love to.
thank you for joining us today. You've been great. I love talking with you, and thank you to all of you out there who have watched and joining us. And we will see you next time on You Should Know. Cheers.